Sound check, test 1 2 1 2 on YouTube. Make sure we're straight on YouTube. Then we'll turn the others on. Looks like we are good here. We are live here, and now we'll wait for the LinkedIn stream to come in. And then this should be good to go. We're just waiting for the stream to populate. 1 2. Yes. Now we're just waiting on LinkedIn. Good morning, everybody. As y'all checking in, I am live in multiple platforms. So whichever one you are on, good morning to you. You can shout yourselves out in the comments if you want. You can tell me your name and location if you are so inclined. If you don't want, don't worry. The game is still being delivered to you whether you do it or not. All right, so we are getting LinkedIn activated. Shout out to the people watching on LinkedIn. They can't really shout themselves out based on the topics that I talk about here. People can't shout themselves out on LinkedIn. So shout out to LinkedIn. Facebook, good morning. X, good morning. Rumble, good morning. YouTube, good morning. Let me just make sure everything's good over here. Instagram right here, good morning. TikTok, good morning. Good morning, Brittany. Good to see you in here. And I mentioned this to Brittany yesterday. Make sure I tell you all. I have a backup account on TikTok. So shout out to everybody on TikTok. Shout out to Bristol, Tennessee. Shout out to Tennessee. Tennessee is a nice place. A little bit too cold for me. I'm in Miami, Florida. I like it warm all year round, but it's a nice place to go, in and out or in the summertime. I have a backup account here on TikTok. So if you just go to my profile on TikTok and see who I'm following, you'll see my backup account. I'm not following that. I think I'm only following 2 people. So I think I'm following Brittany and I'm following my backup account. So make sure y'all follow my backup account. I think it's just Work on Your Game 2. It's just the same as my name, my main account, and then it's just number 2. So make sure you follow that just in case anything goes wrong with my main account over on TikTok. Those of you who are watching on TikTok. So the topic here today, I told y'all we were going to talk about this. You all told me by your commentary that you wanted me to talk about this. Why the mainstream media is dying. So I want to be more disciplined in how we do these lives. I want to be done with my content I start these lives at 8 o'clock. Sometimes I start a few minutes late. I got a 2-year-old and sometimes he needs attention. So that's why if I don't start at 8 o'clock on the dot, that's the reason. I'm using him as the excuse. I'm being tongue in cheek with that, but I start these lives at 8 o'clock. I want to get done the content by 9 o'clock. So now I can just respond to comments from 9 o'clock to about 9:30. Maybe we'll go longer depending on the quality of the comments that people are throwing in here. So that's what we're going to try to do here today. I'm going to try to stay disciplined and only give you content up until the 9 o'clock point. And then at 9 o'clock, I'm going to start going into the questions in the comments. So I want y'all to know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, then I'm going to do it, and then it's going to happen exactly as I said it was going to happen. That's what a professional does. So we're going to professionalize in another way what I'm doing with these live stream processes, and that's how it's going to work. By the way, whatever app you are watching me on, I say this every day. I'll keep saying it. Make sure you follow me in more than one place just in case anything ever happens to any of my accounts, because this is social media. I do not control social media. I use it just like you use it. And probably just like you do not control what these apps decide to do and how they feel about anything that I may say. Because if you're talking about current events, you're usually going to be talking about something that some people agree with you and some people disagree with you. So the people who work at these apps and control these apps and moderate and all that, they are people as well, and they have opinions too. So if I say something that they don't like, you never know. They might not let you see my stuff anymore and whatever mechanism they have to do that. So if you're on TikTok, know that I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and X. My X name is Dre All Day. That's the only other app where I really talk about current events on a consistent basis, and then on these live streams. And by the way, any of these lives, if I tell you that I've talked about a certain topic in the past, if you just go to YouTube and look my name up, Dre Baldwin, my link to YouTube is in my bio on TikTok. You can just go to my YouTube channel, subscribe to me on YouTube. For now, I believe most of my content will live on YouTube for the future, and also Rumble as well. Any of you who's a Rumble user, that's where you can find my material moving forward, just in case you want to catch a replay of something that I did in the past and you missed the live. Smooth Operator over there on Instagram, good morning to you. So the topic here today is why the mainstream media is dying. Told you we were going to talk about this a few weeks ago. I talked about why journalism was dying, and there's a lot of overlap between why journalism is falling apart and why the mainstream media is falling apart, but not complete overlap. I'll tell you when there is some overlap, but let's get into this. As I told you, I want to be disciplined here today, and I want to give you content for about 45 more minutes, then we'll get into the topics. Good morning, everybody over there on TikTok. Good to see you all. Thanks for checking in. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete. I'm the author of 35 books. I've done 4 TEDx talks. I created this brand called Work on Your Game. What we do over here is we give people real talk, straight talk, no BS, no fluff, getting to the point stuff to help them with their personal and professional development. So anything related to your mindset and the way that you show up, your discipline, your confidence, your mental toughness, and just being accountable to doing the things you need to do, we help people with that. That's one of our specialties. And on the professional side, it's getting your business out there, getting your sales game up. We work with a lot of sales teams, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of you who are starting businesses or you already have a business and you want it to do better and go further. We do that over here at Work on Your Game. If you want to learn more about what I do, who I work with, you want to see some receipts for people who we have worked with and then we're currently working with, just go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link is in my bio and on whatever app you are watching me on right now. So if you want to know more about me, you can do that over there. And if you want to see my commentary in text mode, like the written stuff, follow me on X at Dre All Day. That's the only other place where I really talk about current events. Other than that, it's just on video. And then the other stuff is more what I just told you about. Who said that? Smooth Operator said you saw me on SoundCloud. Yeah, we published my daily masterclass, which most of you call a podcast, that comes out on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Y'all know how to find that stuff. I'll tell you about that later. So let's get into the topic here before we run out of time for content. Why the mainstream media is dying. Good morning, Cindy. Why the mainstream media is dying. All right. Now, we all know what the mainstream media is. Let me be clear and frame it what I mean when I say this. These are the people who you can find on TV for the most part. So we're talking to NBCs, ABCs, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, Fox. And this doesn't necessarily mean a mainstream media platform that leans one direction. So a lot of the mainstream media, we can see, and we have seen that they tend to lean a little bit more towards the left and support the Democrats. But there are mainstream media outlets that are also part of that lean more to the right, more conservatively, such as like a Fox News and others. So what I'm talking about is why all of the mainstream media is dying here today. And I talked about this when I talked about journalism, but I'll explain it again because some of you did not hear it, or maybe you need to hear it again. That what happened is social media came about. We know social media has been around for, let's just say 15 years, has been pretty ubiquitous. It started before that, but it's become ubiquitous over the last 15 years or so. And what happened is social media started to draw a lot of attention of the people who used to watch TV. So those of you who are over the age of 30, maybe 35, you remember the days when if you wanted to get information, you turned on the TV and you turned to whatever station and you got your information from the TV screen. But when social media became a thing, and again, over the last 15 years, it's become very ubiquitous. Any of you who has kids, let's say in their teens or early 20s, they have grown up in a world where social media was the place that they went to get their information. That wasn't the way that many of us grew up. Again, if you're over the age of 30 or maybe 35. So when social media became a thing, the mainstream media networks, these broadcasting networks, they realized that they had a problem. The problem was that they were losing viewers because people were now, instead of turning on the TV to get information, they were now turning on the phone to get information. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters for several reasons, because the people who are broadcasters, let's say you work at NBC or you work at CNN or you work at Fox, you can get on social media too. So why is it really a problem? So let's say I'm a broadcaster who works at CNN, and now my show is getting half of the viewers that it was getting before, because now the people who used to watch my show, now they're just going to social media to find out what's happening. Well, I can create a social media account. I can create a YouTube or a TikTok. TikTok's relatively new, but I could create some social media platform and I can start publishing the same stuff I say on the news, on TV. I can just say it on Instagram. All right, so what's the problem? The problem is that these companies need to pay their staffs. All right, everybody understands that these TV networks, they're businesses, right? So people have to get paid. The cameraman has to get paid. The directors have to get paid. The producers have to get paid. The people who are paging in the guests have to get paid. The broadcast talent has to get paid. The building has to get paid for. All of this stuff costs a whole lot of money. Now, the problem with people bringing all their attention to social media LMK358. Thank you for I don't know what that was, but thank you for whatever that was you just gave me on TikTok. Those things, those social medias, you were not, that money, whatever money could be made on social media was not going to the networks. So if CNN has a TV show and half of their viewers are now watching the internet for clips of whatever came on CNN, the problem is that if eyeballs are not watching the TV networks can't make the same money because they make their money from advertisers. And the way advertising works, all of you know what advertising is. So when you're watching TV and the commercials come on, that's how the money gets made. So if you're over the age of 30, you may remember back in the days when we wanted to hear music, we turned on the radio. Some of you, or if you're under the age of 30, you might not even remember what the radio is. But we used to listen to the radio. And if you were listening to the radio, you would hear the DJ on the radio. They would say something like, hey, we're going to be right back in a few minutes with more music after we pay these bills. They would say that as kind of a colloquialism. If they said pay the bills, what does that mean? That meant that they were going to play a bunch of commercials, because the commercials, the advertisers who ran those commercials are how the station actually makes money. The radio station does not make money from playing songs the same way that a TV network does not make money by giving you the TV content. So if you watch The View on TV, they don't make their money because you watch The View. They make their money in between the content by playing ads. The ads are how they make their money. So if people are not watching on TV anymore, the problem is they can't charge the advertisers the same amount of money because the advertiser said, let's see the data. If we're going to run ads on your platform, NBC or CNN or Fox, we need to know how many people are watching your show, and we need to know what the demographics are of those people. And that will make it make sense for us to spend money to advertise on your show, because advertisers pay money to run their ads on your platforms, in case y'all didn't know that. So when you see an ad on the internet or on TV, the company that runs that ad is paying money in order to run the ad. They are willing to pay money to run the ad because their theory is, their reasoning is, if we pay money to run this ad, then that means the amount of money we're going to make back is going to be more than what we spent. And if you can do that consistently, then it makes perfect sense to run advertising because you're making more money on sales than you're spending on the ad. So now that's a business model. And now you have a consistent way of drawing in customers, viewers, subscribers, et cetera, et cetera. So every company that advertises, this is the general theory of what they're doing. So these TV companies, they would have to talk to the advertisers and say, well, hey, Mr. Advertiser, we are only getting half as many viewers on our shows now that we were getting 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So the advertiser says, okay, well, based on that information, I can't pay you the same amount. If I was paying $100,000 a week for ads 5 years ago, now I'm only going to pay you $50,000 a week for ads. And again, I'm keeping this very high level to make it simple for everybody to understand. So now if the company, let's say a Fox or a CNN or an MSNBC, now their revenue for advertising is only half of what it used to be. Well, what's the problem? They still got to pay people. They still got the same staff that they had before, but they only have half the money. All right, any of you who's a business owner, what would you do in this situation? If you're making half as much money as you were before, but you had the same amount of staff that you had before, well, what are you going to do? Usually that means some people are going to lose their jobs. They got to start cutting. We got to start cutting costs. So that means we got to fire some staff, the people on the back end that y'all don't know about. They got to fire some of the people on the screen. So you see companies like ESPN. You see this happen in the news networks as well, that the on-air talent, those are the people that you know about. So the producers, you usually don't know who they are. You don't know who the directors are. You don't know who the showrunners, you don't know any of these people, but they are working too. A lot of those people get fired. And then on-air talent, the people who you know about, they get fired and they got to go do other things. So for example, like being in my background as in sports, I know about the personalities in the sports world a lot more than I follow the news network personalities, but in the sports world, you saw a lot of people who I felt like they were doing a good job based on what they did. So someone like Jalen Rose, he was a former NBA player. He was on ESPN. I liked Jalen Rose's, the stuff that he talked about and the things that he said generally. There were some things he said that I thought were dumb, but for the most part, I like Jalen Rose. He basically got released from ESPN. So they didn't really fire him technically. What they do is when your contract's up, they just say, we're not renewing your contract. So basically you got fired. So guys like Jalen Rose fired from ESPN, Skip Bayless fired from ESPN. Now he went and worked somewhere else, but I think he left Fox Sports recently as well. Marcellus Wiley is another guy left ESPN. Somebody like Jamel Hill, she was on ESPN. I didn't think she was that great, but she got released from ESPN. So what happens with a lot of these companies is that they're releasing the on-air talent because they had to pay these people a lot of money. And the reason they're doing it is not because the people are not doing the job that is expected of them. So these people you see on TV or people you see on, let's just say TV, even if I disagree with the things that they say, it doesn't mean that the company disagrees. The company might like what they're doing. I could think somebody's a terrible TV personality, but if the company that they work for likes what they're doing, then you keep your job. So these people who I'm mentioning, I'm not necessarily fans of all of them. Some of them I am, some of them I'm not. But they lost their jobs not because they weren't doing what the company wanted, but because the company just cannot afford to keep paying everybody. So you got to make some tough decisions. All right, some people can't get paid anymore. We got to start releasing people. So this is what social media did to a lot of mainstream legacy media companies, is that they started cutting into the attention that these companies were getting, and these companies monetize attention. All right, they make their money. CNN makes their money by selling advertising. But if they don't have the same number of eyeballs watching the show that used to be watching, they have to start cutting into things. And the challenge is social media, it basically democratizes attention and it democratizes information. And the reason why that's a challenge, if you think about it, any of you who's in the advertising or media space, you understand this, that when social media became ubiquitous, it became a big problem for traditional legacy companies in all industries. Y'all remember, again, you got to be over the age of 30 to remember this. Y'all remember when music first became downloadable? It first became a thing you could download music. Y'all remember Napster and companies like that? Now, you got to be over 30 to remember these things. So if you're over 30, you know what I'm talking about. Y'all remember companies like Napster? Or it was a whole bunch of them. Some of y'all can name some of those companies. There was one called Kazaa, Kazaa, where you could, and this was probably around the time I was in college. I was in college from 2000 to about 04, till 04, not about 04, but 04. Yeah, LimeWire was another one. Yeah, so these companies where you could, not companies, but software, where now was a new thing. Instead of having to go to the store and buy a CD or a tape, you could now download the music off the internet, which was revolutionary at the time. And what happened is the music industry, this is a big problem for them because now fans like us could get access to the music without having to pay for it. This is a problem. And the radio, even the radio, when an artist song plays on the radio, the artist, the company that owns the publishing, gets paid for that music getting played. But now if I could just download the new 50 Cent album without having to pay for it, well, that means the company that 50 Cent is signed to and 50 himself, they can't make money off the music. And this is a big problem. So if you remember that period between, let's say, about 2002 to about 2008, maybe even up to 2010, you saw a lot of artists getting really angry and really kind of pleading with the fans, please go and buy my music, support the music, pay for the music, because if you don't pay for the music, artists don't get paid for their work. Y'all remember that during that time period, y'all remember artists were really saying that, and companies were trying to crack down on this, and they eventually shut down the Napsters and the LimeWires and all of those things. But the issue was it opened up, as they say, Pandora's box, to where now fans like us, we're like, okay, well, there must be other ways for me to access music instead of having to pay for it. And this is when we started downloading music. Downloading became this big thing, and then peer-to-peer sharing. We could share music with each other. I don't have to go to the store and buy it. You got the 50 Cent song? Okay, send it to me. I'll send you the Beyonce song or whatever. And that became a thing. The problem with this is, and this was kind of like the precursor to what we now have as social media, and I'm using music as an example, because now we could share content, information, and ideas even without anybody making any money. And it was obvious when this became a thing that people were open for this and hungry for it. Can we just share information, music, files, whatever, without anybody making money? I'll just give it to you, and I'm willing to give it to you, and you don't have to pay me. And you're willing to give me stuff, and I don't have to pay you. And people said, all right, we like this. And what happened is around that, let's say between 2005 to 2015, let's say just in that 10-year range, what happened is the way human beings interacted is that we established a new accepted amount for sharing information, things that were generally intangible. We established a new baseline amount of free. This is what happened. The new thing became free is the baseline for accessing, let's say, for example, music. So nowadays, if you want to listen to some music, it's generally free. Now, how many of you have a paid account for like Spotify or Apple Music? I have one. My Apple Music account, my paid membership is like $100. If you pay for a year, it's like $120 a year. Or if you pay by the month, it's like $12 a month. Now, how much did an album cost back in the day? How much did an album cost back in the day? Y'all, again, those of you who are old enough to remember, maybe some of you still buy albums. But when you bought an album, like when I bought 50 Cent, so I'll use 50 as an example. When I bought his debut album, it was like $20. All right, so paid $20 for one CD. So if I wanted to buy 5 CDs, I had to spend $100 because it was like 5 CDs times $20, yeah, $13, $12, something like that for every album. But now think about it, folks. Now you pay $12 a month and you can listen to as much music as you want. So you can listen to 100 albums in a month of November, and you only pay $12 total to listen to 100 albums. So here's the question: how are artists making their money? Because they're not making money from selling albums anymore. That's not a thing anymore. I'm not saying they make zero, but the amount of money that, let's say, Jay-Z or 50 Cent made in the early 2000s from selling an album is way less nowadays, because you can't really make money when the music is being given out essentially for free. So this changed the entire business model of the music industry, where nowadays musicians make most of their money from either selling merchandise or doing shows and doing tours. That is something that still you can't digitize that and put it on the internet. People still like to actually go to the shows. The music industry's business model has flipped completely, because now you can't make money from just selling out. So you didn't even have to really do tours if you didn't want to. If you just had a solid fan base and you just kept making albums, CDs and tapes, you made money because those things had to physically be bought. Somebody had to physically go to the store and buy a CD or physically buy a tape. Now you don't have to do that. Now you can get it all through your phone and nobody pays anybody. And again, you pay $11 a month for Apple Music. If you really think about that, how many albums have you listened to this month? What you're paying for access to those albums is next to nothing. And how is an artist going to have a career and make money doing that? I'm using that as an example. It's the same thing when it came to information, because now instead of turning on the TV where the advertisers get to show me their commercials and I got to watch the commercials to get the content, now I can get the same content without any advertiser advertising anything to me, at least at first. And social media has ads now. But the point is, the price of getting access to this stuff has gone down considerably. That's the point that I'm making. The price has gone down considerably, and this is hurting the mainstream media, and they've had to figure out ways to adjust. They're still figuring out how to adjust right now. And the issue is, and this is really the second point, essentially, they lost the game. They lost the game of competing against social media, and they were never going to beat social media. Same way that the music industry was never going to beat Napster and LimeWire. There's no way they could beat free. If I could buy Beyonce's album for $20 in the store, or I can go on LimeWire and hunt around for 10 minutes and I can get the whole Beyonce album without paying anything, well, which one am I going to do? If you offer incentive to human beings, they're going to respond to the incentives. So the incentive of, well, you should go to the store and buy Beyonce's album because you want to support Beyonce, that will work on a few people, but it ain't going to work on most people. Out of 100 people, that'll work on maybe 10 people. The other 90 people, hey, I like Beyonce, but I'm not going to the store to pay $20 if I could download it in my dorm room for free. And most people, that's what they did. So the music industry eventually capitulated and realized, okay, we can't win this game. Let's figure out how else can artists make their money, since we can't make it by getting people to go to the store and buy the album anymore. Even online, when Apple, what were they called? When Apple Music first came out, was it always called Apple Music? I thought it had a different name. I think it was called something else when it first came out. Anybody remember, or was it always called Apple Music? But when Apple Music first came out, because this is when we had the iPod, not the iPhone or iPad, but the iPod, where it was just music. You would go in the Apple store and you could buy a song for like 99 cents. You remember that? You could buy the song for 99 cents instead of downloading it. And they were trying to meet them. So it used to be you had to buy the whole album to get a song. Then they said, all right, now we'll buy iTunes. Yes, iTunes. That was the name of it. Thank you, Ms. Brett. iTunes. So when you had to buy the whole album to get a song. You like one song off your favorite singer's album, you had to buy the whole album. Then they said, all right, we'll sell you the single for 99 cents. You could download it for 99 cents. But people are still like, well, I can get it for free. Why would I pay 99 cents when I can download it for free? And they tried to protect the music and put protections on it to where you couldn't download it or you couldn't access it. And they tried to fight against the Napsters. It didn't work. Eventually, we saw that they lost. And they realized, okay, the price that the general public wants is free. We have to give this to them essentially for free. And we got to figure out other ways to make money. So the music industry evolved. And nowadays, it's 2024 when I'm recording this. To the music industry, nobody is telling their fans, hey, go buy my album. You don't hear anybody saying that anymore. Now, some people still do buy albums, but you don't hear any artist saying, hey, go buy my album. They're saying, go listen to it on Spotify, Apple, etc. They know the deal. Everyone has accepted that this is the deal. And has any of you looked up the numbers of how many plays on a streaming platform an artist has to get to make a certain amount of money? Like, do y'all understand how much money an artist makes for every stream of their album? So if you go listen to, there was someone like Taylor Swift who was in a fight against, who was she fighting against? Was she fighting against Spotify? I know she was fighting against her label and her people who own her music also, but I think it was Spotify. Was it? Anybody can let me know. I'm not a Taylor Swift follower, but I heard this story because it was a big story that Taylor had pulled all her music off of Spotify or off of Apple Music, one of those platforms, because she was protesting how much money she was making on every stream. And it wasn't a lot of money. She's like, man, I got all these fans, but I'm only making this much money per stream. It was Spotify, Gaga. Someone said Garth Brooks is a good example. Now, you're referencing Garth Brooks to me. Like, do you really think I don't know about Garth Brooks. I don't know about, just like I don't know about Taylor Swift, but I get what you're saying. Garth Brooks is a very famous guy. I know who he is. I know he's a country music guy, even though I don't listen to country music. I know his name. So he's a very big artist, right? And a lot of artists, they took their music off of these platforms because they're like, yo, do you see how much money we make? How many times somebody has to listen to our stuff in order for us to make the same amount that we used to make? It's very small. So any of you look this up and y'all see this, that this is a big thing that the internet did to them. And some artists, like you said, like someone mentioned Garth Brooks, and there are many others who I'm not even mentioning here, that they have decided to opt out of the game because they have a strong enough fan base to where they can still make money just selling direct to their consumers, direct to their fan base, if your fan base is strong enough. But if your fan base is not strong enough, or your relationship to your fan base is the better way of saying it. If your relationship to the fan base is not strong enough, you can't get away with that. So there are people they have a strong enough connection that they can do it, but others don't have that strong enough relationship. They can't do that. So this is all about building the audience and building the relationship with the audience, which, by the way, not my main point here today, but any of you who's in business, it doesn't matter what business, you could be in the coaching, consulting business, speaking business, like I am, and writing books and things like that. Understand that the most important thing you own in your business is your relationship to your clients and customers. It's not the product that you sell. So if you sell coaching, the coaching itself is not the most valuable thing you have. The most valuable thing you have is your relationship, because when you have a strong relationship with your audience, you can tell them, yo, I'm not messing with Instagram anymore. Come to follow me over here. I'm not using social media anymore. Get on my email list. I'm not using this anymore. Come follow my Telegram or get in my WhatsApp group or anything that you can have ownership of. When your relationship is strong enough, your audience will follow you from the social media platform, which is very convenient, to something that might be a little bit less convenient, but you have more ownership over it. This is the reason why I say every time I do these lives, make sure you follow me in more than one place. And when we get all of our other things, we got more things coming that I'm not going to talk about right now. When we get more things in place, I'm going to tell you to go and connect with me in places that are not controlled by social media platforms, because again, they can do whatever they want and I don't control it. And at the same time, I can do a lot more in places that I have control over. I can say things that I can't say on some of these platforms because of this. So any of you who's in business or you plan on getting in business, your relationship with your audience is the most important thing that you own. It is not your number of followers on a platform, which is a complete joke. Those are what we call vanity metrics, don't really matter. It is not the product or service that you sell. So if you sell a physical product, that's not the most valuable thing. You have a service, even if you make music. The most valuable thing Taylor Swift has is not the songs that she has made. The most valuable thing she has is the connection she has to her audience, because that can go with her anywhere, even if she stops making music for a year. Just look at someone like Rihanna. Then I think Rihanna was talking about how she's not really focused on music anymore. She's into this fashion thing, whatever she's doing. But she has hardcore fans who, even if she stops making songs, are still going to follow Rihanna because they're a big fan of Rihanna, the person. That's the relationship. That's the most important thing you own in business. So anyway, moving on. I told you I got to be disciplined here. We got 20 more minutes of content, then we're going to get to the comments. The 5 stages of grief. Any of you familiar with the 5 stages of grief? This is what the mainstream media is going through. So let me tell you what the 5 stages of grief are. They are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. These are the 5 stages of grief. The mainstream media is on stage 2 right now. Mainstream media is on stage 2. Now, let's look at the music industry and I'll explain. Brittany, can you pin that backup account? Again, is work on your game with the number 2 at the end. Work on your game 2. So it's my same screen name with the number 2. So the 5 stages of grief, the music industry. Let's look at what the music industry did. When we started downloading music, all of us did it. At least if you're over 30, you remember. So at first they tried to deny it. Oh, nobody's downloading music. That's not happening. That was the first thing. They denied it. Second thing was anger. So there were some kids, like if some 15-year-old kid was in his parents' house in his bedroom downloading a whole bunch of music, I don't know if y'all know about this. Like they were sending police and like federal agents to kids' houses and confiscating their computers because they were downloading too much music. So those of us who dabbled in it and we would download an album or two here and there, they weren't coming after us. But people who were like doing it heavily, they really cracked down on these people. So the second stage was anger when they just started fighting against it. And right now, I'll get to the mainstream media in a second. The third stage in the music industry was bargaining. Okay, instead of making you buy the whole album, we'll let you buy the song for 99 cents on iTunes. That was the bargain. All right, let's try to bargain with us. The bargaining didn't work because people said, no, not 99 cents, free. Not 99 cents, free. So they tried to bargain. That didn't work. The next stage was depression. The music industry was in a little bit of they were depressed. Like, man, a lot of artists were saying between like 2005 and maybe 2010, a lot of artists were like, well, man, how am I going to make money? How can I stay in this business? How can I do what I want to do business-wise when I can't even make money from selling my music anymore? People were just like, what do I do about this? Finally, it got to the point of acceptance. Acceptance is, okay, we realize that people want the music for free and the internet has made it easy for people to get it. All right, so if I'm a rapper or a singer or a band, we just had to figure out another way to make money because obviously we can't force people to go buy the albums anymore and we can't stop them from downloading. And the music industry evolved and they figured it out. So here we are in 2024. We still have plenty of artists who have big fan bases and they're still making money, at least from what we hear on TV and on the internet. They're making money. They just evolved and figured out a way to make it work because of the circumstance. The circumstance has shifted underneath their feet. So the music industry went through these 5 stages of grief and they evolved. The mainstream media has not gone through all 5 stages right now. They haven't yet gone through them. Let me tell you where they are. So the first thing is denial. So the mainstream media was in a state of denial. And this, you can see this good example of this is when Donald Trump won the 2016 election and mainstream media just could not believe how did this guy win? Because the mainstream media put out so many terrible reports and stories about him and repeated them so often that they said there's no way that any logical person could hear all these negative stories that we put out about this guy and still vote for him. And then half the country voted for him anyway. So they were in a state of denial. How is this possible? Now they've gotten past the state of denial and now they're in the state of anger. Right now, this is where the mainstream media is. They're in stage 2 of the levels of grief. They're in stage 2 of grief, which is anger. And you hear this, and after Trump wins, because he won once, you might say that's just a fluke. Because then in 2020, Joe Biden won, right? Now 2024, he wins again. And now the mainstream media is saying to themselves, wait a minute, we just trashed this guy, his whole name and reputation for 10 years, damn near, and he won again? How is that possible? So now what you hear is a lot of mainstream media people saying stuff like, if you follow this stuff, they're saying things like, know the reason that Trump won? You know how they're explaining it? Any of you know what they're saying? Let me ask this question. Some of you might know. Do y'all hear what the mainstream media outlets are saying to explain why and how Trump won a second time? Because 2016, again, it could be a fluke. Anybody could have something happen randomly and you could just call it luck. You know their explanation for why he won this year? And I'm talking to mainstream media. Yes, traditional all day, you got it. That's what they're saying. The mainstream media people on like CNN, NBC, MSNBC, CBS, they're saying that the reason why Trump won in 2024 is because you have all these, I can't say that name, Sammy, that R word. I cannot say that on this app. So that's not what they're saying anyway. But what they're saying is that all of these non-mainstream platforms, people like myself, people who have podcasts, people with YouTube channels, people on these independent platforms, they're the ones who are influencing voters. And that's the reason why voters still voted for Trump. And they're saying it in a way like they're mad, like they're incredulous. And what they're saying is they're right wing. They're like, oh, all these right wing podcasts, they're the ones who are influencing people to go vote for Trump. Because if they were smart and they just, listen to us, the mainstream, there's no way they will vote for Trump. This is a state, they're still in the state of, they're a little bit between 1 and 2. They're still denying the reality and they're mad because they don't have as much influence as they used to have. And again, 2016 was the first punch in the face that they didn't accept it. They said, well, maybe it was luck. And 2020 kind of validated that belief. But 2024 has hit them with another punch in the face. So they got hit with a 1-2 combination, or really a 2-3. The right hand and a left hook is what they got hit with. This year was the left hook. And finally, the mainstream media is realizing, okay, we can't act like this is not happening. Why is it happening? So now they're getting incredulous over anyone who has the ear of the audience aside from themselves. That's the anger stage that they're in right now. Mainstream media is still trying to demonize anyone who's not mainstream, who has a message that goes against the message that they're sharing, and they're saying, well, that must explain why Trump's winning, because he went on the Rogan podcast, or he went on all the other shows that he went on. That's why he won, because these people are listening to those folks instead of us. And here's what they're saying. It's not that they're saying just because they're listening to them. Here's what you hear people say. So this woman named Jen Psaki, she used to be the White House press secretary before John Pierre, who's there now. She works for, what platform is she on? She on CNN? I think she's on CNN. So Jen Psaki, what she says is what the government needs to do, what the White House needs to do is they need to do more. They need to do more, what's the word? Like more oversight of social media and more oversight of these podcasts and checking them for misinformation or disinformation, because when they're putting out bad information, that needs to be regulated the same way that we in the mainstream get regulated. This is complete bullshit. Oh, she's on MSNBC. All right, that makes even more sense. So they're even further to the left. And this is what they're saying now. They're saying, well, we need to get more regulation of these independent platforms because they're obviously saying stuff that we don't agree with, and that must mean that they're wrong. This is the stage that they're in right now. Next is they're going to get into bargaining, which means you're going to see a lot of these mainstream people, they're going to start their own podcasts and their own YouTubes, and they're going to try. And if they're no good, they're going to get bashed, because the market is never wrong. The market always tells you exactly to your face, exactly how it feels about you. Then you're going to get into depression when they realize that if Jen Psaki tries to start a podcast, it's not going to do too well, because she only does well on the platform that she's on because she's pushing the message that her employers want her to push. If she goes into the independent space and tries to do that, it's not going to work, because people are going to say, well, what you're saying is not true. And people will leave comments on your YouTube. They can't leave comments on MSNBC. So she's going to, then you're going to a state of depression, not just her, but the industry itself. And finally, there's going to be acceptance. I say this will take probably by the time we get to the 2028 election cycle, they will have accepted this, maybe. But the mainstream media is a very big conglomerate, and conglomerates tend to move slowly. So any of you who works in corporate, you work in the government, you work in academia is a little bit faster, but any of you work in corporate America, especially a big company, or you work in the government, you understand that change happens extremely slowly, even when it's obvious that the change needs to happen, because you have so many levels of bureaucracy. Change happens slow. So the mainstream media, they're going to change, but it's going to happen slowly. So I'm predicting 2028, but I might be being a little bit too optimistic. It might take longer than that, and depending on what happens. So if a Republican wins again in 2028, then it might speed up. It might speed up the process, but it might not. And if a Democrat wins, it probably won't speed up at all. For example, if Kamala Harris had won the 2024 election, then first of all, I probably wouldn't be talking about what I'm talking about here today, because it wouldn't be as obvious to people. And secondly, the mainstream media would not go through these stages as quickly, because they wouldn't have got slapped in the face. Usually with human beings, sometimes we have to face a catastrophe before we finally recognize reality. Can any of you co-sign that we will tell ourselves, I need to do this, I need to do this. We'll keep telling ourselves I need to do a thing, but we'll keep putting it off because there's no nothing forcing us to take action. But then when some catastrophe happens based on that same thing we continue to delay, finally we're like, all right, I guess I got to do something now, because now it's a catastrophe. I need to fix my diet. Then you have a stroke or a heart attack, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, all right, if you don't fix your diet, you won't make it another 6 months. Now, all of a sudden, now you want to get in shape. Now you want to hire a personal trainer. Now you want to go to the health food store. Now you want to stop eating ice cream. But you knew that 5 years ago. But until you had faced a tragic situation, you weren't going to do anything. This is just human nature. And the people who work in the mainstream media are humans just like we are. So moving on. Why is this a thing? Why is this even happening? This is happening because the mainstream media is used to being able to shape the story and basically have the audience, that's us, in their pockets. That's what they're used to. Again, if you're over the age of 30, you remember. The only place we could get news was either from the newspaper, which is part of the mainstream media, or TV. Those are the only places you get information. So all of us were getting pretty much the same information. People had different slants and spins on the information, but there was only a few outlets you get information from. You had the TV networks, and then you had the newspaper where you live, and you had some national newspapers. So you get a USA Today or the New York Times or the Washington Post, and then you had your local newspapers. There weren't that many. Like, you could count all the places that were giving you news. You could count them on you could say them. You knew exactly who they were. Nowadays, how many different outlets do you have to get information? We have millions, literally millions of different outlets to get information. So the mainstream media is experiencing cognitive dissonance because their belief, we control the narrative of the news, is clashing with reality, which is they don't control it anymore. And cognitive dissonance is the conflict that you experience when you realize that your beliefs and reality are not on the same page anymore. They used to be, but they're not anymore. And a lot of people experienced a ton of cognitive dissonance when Trump won in 2024 because they couldn't believe that he won again. And they did it. They experienced it in 2016. They experienced it again this year. And who knows? In the future, there will be more. Now, experiencing cognitive dissonance doesn't make you a bad person, by the way. We all experience it at different times for different reasons. What determines your outcomes in life is not whether or not it happens, is what you do when it happens. So when reality clashes with your beliefs and reality seems to be winning, the question is, what do you do in that moment? Okay, I thought things were this way, but they're actually this way. What do you do? Do you adjust your beliefs, or do you question reality, or do you act like reality didn't happen? That's what most people do. They do options 2 and 3. They question reality. They say, well, there's no way Trump won. No, he didn't win. All right, it was that other country interfering in our election. That's how he won. That's what we call rationalizing. Or half the people in the country are just dumb, racist, etc. That's the reason that he won. All right, that's rationalizing. Instead, you could say, maybe I thought things were one way, but it's actually another way. That requires a level of humility of challenging your own ego, which a lot of people are not willing to do, especially when they're emotionally engaged in a belief. So all of you need to check yourself for that. So the mainstream media has lost their hold over the minds of the general population. And that's why they're going through the 5 stages of grief, which again, first is denial. Second is anger. They're in the anger stage right now, and they're a little bit still denying the situation. But for the most part, they're starting to realize what's happening. Now they're just getting mad about it. The next step is they're going to try to bargain with reality and say, all right, well, we're going to send our TV hosts. So these people you see on the mainstream media on TV, you're going to see them try to start a podcast. So you're going to see The View, people on The View, Whoopi Goldberg is going to have a podcast. All right, that's going to happen. Trust me. Watch over these next 4 years. You're going to see mainstream media people. They're either going to stay on the mainstream and start like podcasting or YouTubing, or they're going to lose their jobs because the company can't pay them anymore, and they're going to try to start a podcast or a YouTube. You're going to see this happen. So mark my words. Remember that I said this. You're going to see them on TikTok. You're going to see them doing this stuff. And it's not that they can't be successful. They could succeed depending on how they show up. But if they show up on a TikTok or a YouTube or a podcast talking the way these people talk in the mainstream media, they're going to fail because the everyday consumer can say back to them, yo, we reject this, because you can't really reject MSNBC. All right, they have a very big platform. They're a big conglomerate. You're basically in a bubble in which you can say what you want to say. If you watch The View on TV, they get on there and trash Donald Trump and the audience claps, right? Because you can't get in the studio if you're not going to clap. Right. So, but you get on a podcast, somebody can call you out on your bullshit. You get on YouTube sounding stupid, the audience is going to let you know that what you say is dumb. You get on TikTok sounding dumb, people are going to let you know you sound dumb. It won't work in the independent platforms because this is the jungle. The way I analogize it is kind of like you got a lion that lives in the zoo, you got a lion that lives in the jungle. They're both lions and they both eat every day, but they're getting their food completely different ways. One lion gets fed at 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock every day. The lion doesn't have to do anything to get the food. It gets thrown into the cage by the zookeeper. The other lion has to go out and kill something at 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Otherwise, the lion can't eat or will starve to death. Those lions both are eating and they both live and they're both lions, but they have completely different realities. And the entrepreneurship world is the jungle. It is not the zoo. And these mainstream media folks, the people who work there, they are living in the zoo and they think that they're lions, but they're going to find out what a lion actually lives like when they get thrown into the jungle. Everybody follows my analogy. So these independent platforms, this is my 5th point, they don't have a mandate to say something a certain way or a certain slant to take. See, when you get on an independent platform, and when I say independent, what I mean is you're not part of a conglomerate. So if you get on TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or Rumble and you start putting your message out there, the general public is going to tell you loud and clear how they feel about it. And you can't hide from that. And you can't act like it's not happening. See, if you work at NBC, you can act like you don't hear the people in the comments on Instagram because you don't have to listen to them. But if your whole platform is on Instagram, then you got to listen to what the people are saying, because if they don't want to hear you, then you got a problem. Now you have no business. That's the issue. So this is what's going to happen with the mainstream media. Again, watch over the next 4 years. It may take longer or lesser. It depends on what happens with, of course, with Trump, which is a big story, anything he does. And then whoever wins the 2028 election, if it becomes a Democrat or a Republican. If it's a a Republican. So Trump has won here, right? If whoever runs in 2028 for the Republican Party wins, if the Republicans win in 2028, whoever that is, this is going to speed up the process. Now, if a Democrat wins, then it's going to slow down the process. But either way, the process will happen. Anyway, my last point. We got 5 minutes here. I'm sticking to my discipline. I told you I'll be done by 9. Then we'll do comments. So smartphones and social media has made unpolished production cool. This is a problem for the mainstream media. So as you can see me talking here, this is not a set. I'm sitting in my home office. It looks good. I set it up so that it looks good. I got the sun hitting me, so I got good lighting, but this is not a professional set. I got 3 lenses that I'm looking at right here, but there's not multiple camera angles. There's no producer over here. There's nobody giving me notes in my ear. None of that stuff. This is unpolished. It may look pretty polished, but this falls into the unpolished category. When you get on your Instagram or your TikTok, you just make a video like holding the camera like this and you put it up. We have come to, as consumers, we like this stuff. We like to see people just talk regular, unpolished. It doesn't have to be in a studio. You don't have to go and have a whole team or a whole staff to put your show together. There are people who do that and it works for them. But there are other people who just have regular conversations. It's simple. Look at someone like the Joe Rogan show. Joe Rogan sits in, I don't even know what that is. The studio is pretty basic. It's 2 cameras. You got 1 camera on the guest. You got 1 camera on Joe. And it just goes back and forth between them as they're talking. And that's all they do. And that's the whole show. And people like that. People have come to accept. We just want regular, basic looking content. We just want the quality of the content and how people put it out there. It doesn't have to be this highly produced thing. So any of you out there who's thinking about getting into the content game, you want to get on TikTok or YouTube, you want to start a podcast, but you are a little bit embarrassed about your setup because you're like, well, I don't have a studio. I don't have the best microphone. I don't have these high-tech cameras. I don't have any of that stuff. Like I'm using the iPad over here. I'm using an iPhone, another one over here. I'm using the computer over here. I'm not using any high-tech camera. I'm not a tech person, but I got the content. I got the material. All right, that's my strong suit is I got the material. Now, if someone said, Dre, hey, we'll give you a studio and you can record in here for free, then I take it. But I don't need to invest in those things, at least not for now, because people want the material. They want the content more than the context matters so much. When I say context, what I mean is the way that you record, the way you put your stuff out there. Sometimes people like the unpolished material because at least they know you're being honest. At least they know you're keeping it real. Doesn't mean they will agree with you, but at least they know that you're keeping it real, especially when you're not connected to some conglomerate. At least people can believe then that you're saying what you really think. All right? I don't think any of you thinks my message is being fed to me by somebody else. Right? Nobody owns me. Nobody controls me. I don't work for anyone. So whatever I tell you, again, whether you agree or not, you know that is what I actually think. Nobody's saying, Dre, say this. All right. There are no product placements in these streams. All right. The products you see behind me are my products. All right. So there are no product placements here. I'm not owned by anybody. I'm not saying that if somebody runs ad, that means they're lying. Let me be clear about that as well. Because on my podcast, I do have ads. We do have sponsors, but they don't tell me what to do. And that's part of the agreement. Y'all can't tell me what to say. Y'all can't tell me what not to say. You cannot censor my material. And if you think you want to do that, then we shouldn't work together. I want to maintain my independence. And consumers, we like independent platforms because at least we believe they're telling us the truth. And looking at the mainstream media, this could have been a whole point unto itself. Mainstream media has developed a reputation for not telling us the truth. That's just what it is. We have come to look at the mainstream media with a skeptical eye. Even if you're a fan of the mainstream, if you're a fan of MSNBC or CNN or The View, you understand that they're going to tell you something that you want to hear. And if you love The View or MSNBC, you probably hate Fox News, right? So what does that tell you? And if you love Fox News, you probably hate MSNBC and you hate The View. Why is this? Because you know that each one is going to give you their version of reality. And that's not what news is supposed to be. The news, the free press, when it was initially created, this is in the founding documents of the United States. The free press was designed to keep the government honest. That's why the free press was designed. And the press, of course, back then was people writing in, let's say, newspapers. Their purpose was to report what the government was doing so that everyday citizens, because the government is supposed to be what? For the people and by the people, so that the everyday citizens knew what the government was doing. And the government understood that the press is going to report on everything we do. So we can't be playing around here. We can't be doing no shenanigans here. We got to be honest because the press is going to report everything that we do. And if we do something that is shady, then the people are going to know about it and we're going to have to answer to that. That's what the press was designed to do, to keep the government accountable. But now look what the press does. The press known as the mainstream media. Now it seems like they kind of work with the government to tell you what they want you to know rather than what's actually true. And this is why we don't trust them anymore. So any of you look at the founding documents, that was the purpose of the free press, is to keep the government honest. They're not honest anymore. And the mainstream media is working with them rather than the mainstream media is actually kind of supposed to be like a counter. It's supposed to be like a counterattack to the government. So any of you saw the TV show, and I'm gonna wrap this up in a second. Any of you saw the TV show The Sopranos, and you remember when at one point the federal agents were following Tony Soprano, right? They bugged his house and all that stuff, and the federal aide, the guy who was leading the investigation against Tony Soprano, he would see him sometimes, like later on in the show. If y'all remember the show, he would see the FBI guy sometimes, Tony, and they would shake hands and sit down and talk. And it's not that Tony was telling on anybody. It was just that it was a respectable counterclass between the two of them. Tony knew that they were investigating him, and he knew, and the FBI guy knew that Tony knew about them, and they could just be respectable. There was, as the saying went back in the days, honor amongst thieves. That's what we used to have. We used to have honor amongst thieves, and the press was supposed to hold the government accountable. They don't do that anymore. They basically work with them. They basically work with the government, and this is why we don't trust them. So all that said, let me recap these points quickly, and then we'll take comments. Why the mainstream media is dying, and I didn't really enumerate these points, but I'll lay it out so y'all just get the general gist. Number one, I already told you how social media influenced them to play a different game, same way that Napster influenced the music industry. Number two, the mainstream media lost the game, but they're still trying to play. Number three, we got the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Right now, the mainstream media is in between stages 1 and 2. They're still denying reality, and they're mad about it, that the reality is not what they thought it was. Number 4, why is this happening? Because the mainstream media is used to shaping the story and telling you what they want you to know, and you had no other options of getting information. Now we have options. So that's why they're having a problem. That's the cognitive dissonance. Number 5, independent producers, independent publishers like myself and other podcasters, YouTubers, TikTokers, etc. We don't have a mandate as to what to say or what not to say. We can say whatever we want, and we can tell our real opinions, and consumers respect that someone's telling me what they really think, whether you agree with it or not. Mainstream media does not have this license. They can't say whatever they want. Like, you can't work at MSNBC and be praiseworthy of Donald Trump. You can't do that. You get fired. They wouldn't even let you on the air. And you can't get on Fox and talk bad about, for the most part, talk bad that much about the Republicans. You can a little bit, but not that much. So we know this. And number 6, smartphone and social media has made unpolished production cool, which means you don't have to be in a studio with 8 cameras and a whole bunch of producers in order to put content out there and have it appreciated by the audience, which makes it easier for anyone to be a publisher. You don't have to be in the mainstream in order to do so. So, all right, I missed about 2 minutes, but we're close enough. So let's get into it. I'm getting to the comments. Let's start over on YouTube. A Bert says, black folks don't want to hear that. I think I saw when you put that comment, and I know you're right. GATX, good morning to you as well. Let's see. I'm seeing anything on Rumble, YouTube, LinkedIn. All right, I'm going to do Instagram, then we'll do TikTok. So if you got comments, get them ready. And Brittany, you can start pinning them in a moment. Let me do Instagram first. Don't pin them yet. And then we'll get over to TikTok. Paco GB, good morning, sir. Good to see you over there on IG. Joe said they'll mute their audience and deactivate the comment. Yeah, you're probably right. All right, let's get to it. TikTok. Chevalier says news medias have become conglomerates owned by corporations and oligarchs. Yes. I mean, they always were, but it's become more obvious now because now we have access to the information and we can see that's what they're doing. Magical said royalties from the music. Yes, you can still make royalties, but in order to make royalties, it has to be tracked. It has to be tracked what got played. And when the Napsters and all that were around, you couldn't even track who was listening to your music. So that was the challenge. Now with streaming, you can still get royalties, but the royalties are so small. So any of you look that up? Can any of you know the number of how much money an artist makes when someone streams their song? It's so small. It's like 0.0002 cents for every stream. It's a very small number. An artist posted it years ago. I haven't seen, maybe they've updated the numbers, but it was basically saying artists can't make any money just from people listening to the music like it was back in the day. Chevalier says it truly is 24/7 news cycle has killed legacy news. Yes, it has. I agree with that. It's really hurt the newspaper industry as well. There's still people who read newspapers, maybe people over the age of 50 still read newspapers. The problem is people over the age of 50, eventually that group is going to no longer be around. Any of you got a child who's in their 20s? Do they read the newspaper? They don't even know what the newspaper is. So the newspaper industry is going to be going away. And you see many of them are moving to the internet and subscription models. The problem is, and there are still people who subscribe to get the news, but the problem is, why would I subscribe to get the news when I can get the news from 100 different podcasts and I don't have to pay? Policy said, in my journalism course, professor said that news media has a that has a sofa is not real news. Oh, your professor said that? Well, of course they said that. Yeah, they're a professor. So I'm glad you mentioned that they're a professor. And news is whatever's happening. So your professor is technically wrong. Now, I'm sure what you're saying is taken out of context. I'm sure that your professor said other things, but yeah. Needs to a truth in media law. I don't know what that means. Mark says debt from touring. Yes. ST4 said that's why concerts are so expensive. Have prices gone up for concerts? Anybody know? I don't go to concerts. So anybody know if prices have gone up to go to a concert? Let me know. I would understand if they did. When Taylor Swift was in Miami, she did shows 3 nights in a row. That's where the money's at. And I saw the tickets. I'm like, wow. Like the cheapest ticket was like $1,000. And they were sold out. She sold out 3 straight nights. That's a relationship with an audience. Black Vegan said, that's why without tours, artists starve nowadays. Yeah, pretty much. Traditional All Day said, you love Rumble? Yeah, I heard Bongino. I know of Bongino. I haven't followed his stuff fully, but I know who he is. Mark said, listening to vinyl helps the production. Helps artists on producing. Yeah, but how many people are buying vinyl? That's the issue. How many people are buying vinyl? My dad has vinyl records from like back in the days. And where was I at? I was at it was a book fair in town last week, and there were people selling vinyl records. So there are people who still buy that stuff, but again, they're either really like deep music head people, or it's like older people, like people my dad's age. So Brittany said, my thoughts on Don Lemon, the guy from CNN. Well, that's what he's doing right now, right? Don Lemon left mainstream media, right? And now he has his own platform. The challenge with him being on his own platform is that now he has to hear from the everyday people who disagree with what he says. When you're working at CNN, you don't have to listen to those people. You just got to listen to your bosses. And you do what the bosses want you to do, you keep getting paid. When you go into the non-mainstream world, now you have to listen to the everyday people. And if they don't like what you're saying, then your platform won't do anything. So so someone like Don Lemon, maybe he will succeed, maybe not. I'm not a fan of Don Lemon, but we'll see. I think he was doing better when he was in the bubble of CNN than he's doing now, as far as the response he was getting from the people who matter. Because the people who matter when he was at CNN were his bosses. The people who matter when they're on a podcast are your audience. And those are two different things. At CNN, if you work at CNN, the people who matter are not the people who watch CNN, it's the people who pay you. They're the ones who matter. But when you have your own platform, the people pay you, the everyday people who are watching your stuff. So if they don't like you, you ain't got a business. That's the difference in the business models. Angelica 2008 said, how am I? I'm doing good. Thank you. Jocks says the industry is returning to direct to consumers. CDs and records are coming back strong. Yeah, right. I think you're trolling me, JQX. They are not coming back at all. They're not coming back strong. They're not coming back weak. They're not coming back, period. And many people don't even know what those are, JQX. So they can't come back because if somebody's under the age of 30, they don't even know what those are. JQ said, go on Target and you'll witness the return of CDs and records and the players. Artists are fighting. No, artists already fought and they already lost. JQX, how old are you? I'm assuming you're over the age of 45 saying this. Chris said, what happened with Candace? What about her? Candace who? Candace Owens? Something happened to her? Last I saw, she had a new video on YouTube like yesterday. Something happened to her? If so, I don't know about it. She died, said that was funny AF. What are you referring to? I hope it was something that I said, but I don't know what it was. Breeze said it all started when the media began endorsing candidates. The other half quit buying newspapers. Yeah, I mean, the media has endorsed candidates for years. That's always been a thing. But the thing is, their everyday reporting is so slanted that people already know who they're going to endorse by the time they come out with an endorsement. So it's not even news anymore. So the Washington Post trashes Trump and trashes Republicans every day for 4 years. And then they say, well, we want to come out with a story telling you who we're endorsing. Well, is anybody guessing who they're endorsing? So that's why it's not news. It would be news if they were so objective that we couldn't tell who they liked. See, if someone's a true journalist, I shouldn't be able to tell who you like and who you don't like. That's what journalism is supposed to look like. And if you're a true journalist, if I see you wrote an article about a certain topic, I shouldn't be able to predict what you're going to say. Like a true journalist writes an article about Donald Trump, I shouldn't be able to predict that it's going to be positive or negative just by who you are. And that's why journalism is failing, because people have taken sides. Journalists' only side is with the truth. And that's why journalism is falling apart, because these people are picking sides. They want to be opinion. They want to give their opinions instead of telling us the truth. Mark said, fire department coming after burned CDs. Probably. All right, let me see. All right, let's see what we got. Yes, let's get me to 15K likes. Thank you, Brittany, for letting people know. We're at 11K right now, so let's get more likes. Those of you who are watching over on TikTok. The interference on social media. I mean, that's what people keep saying, but I don't. I never bought into that story even back in 2016. That R word that I can't say. Someone said the FAFO stage. For who? For which Americans? I mean, I hear people saying it on both sides. So I hear people who, let's say, if you're a Trump supporter or you like that Trump won, you're saying that the other side is in the FAFO stage. Fuck around and find out is what that means for those who don't know. And then there are people who don't like Trump and they're mad that he won. They're like, well, now that Trump won, now your costs are going to go up and they're going to deport somebody and all these negative things are going to happen. And now y'all are going to fuck around and find out. When the reality is we all have to live in the same world regardless of who you voted for. So it sounds good when people say it and they're just assuaging their emotions. But in the end, we all got to live in America regardless of who the president is. Even if you didn't vote for the president, you are still subject to what happens as a result of the president. And Brittany said that's why they're going against. Yeah, they're trying to get this app to change their ownership. And on one side, I understand, but on another side, I don't. I rather all platforms stay as independent as possible, but I don't want the government involved at all. It's me says influencers allow for real people to speak. Yes, I mean the people on TV are real people too, but they are serving a different audience. That's the difference. When you're an influencer, your audience are the actual people. When you work in a bureaucracy, the people who matter the most are those who write your paycheck, those who sign your paychecks. That's the issue. So Don Lemon, when he was at CNN, again, his bosses mattered more than just the everyday person's comment, because the everyday person's comment didn't control his check. Now it controls his check. So now he got to serve a different audience. That's the issue. So let me see. Information is overflowing now. Yes, we have too much information now. And this is why people are saying, using these other terms, these new terms that they made up, misinformation and disinformation, which is basically a way of trying to invalidate something that somebody else said. But Donald Trump already beat them at that game. When he said fake news, he basically he destroyed the mainstream media. Just by saying that term, fake news, he invalidated the entirety of mainstream media. And now a bunch of people can just say anything the mainstream media says, I don't have to listen to it. So again, Trump is very good at this stuff. Whether you like him or not, you cannot deny that he's very good at it. And he just took the credibility out from under the mainstream media by using that term. And they tried to fight back with misinformation, disinformation, but it doesn't work as well. And they already lost their credibility. So people aren't even listening to them when they say it. Mark said, laying out the paper and going to the printer was fun in college. I still got a printer now. But yes, I remember that. Printing out directions. Y'all remember printing out directions when you had to drive somewhere? You would go to MapQuest and print out the directions. You had the directions on a piece of paper in the passenger seat while you're driving. And you're looking at the directions while you're driving, trying to figure out where to go. Some of y'all don't know anything that I'm talking about. If you're under 30, you have no idea what I'm talking about. You got Google Maps and navigation, but we used to have to print it out on paper, and you had to drive 5 hours, and you're trying to make sure you're getting off at the right exit, and there was no phone telling you, hey, your exit's coming up in 2 minutes or in 2 miles. You had to gauge that shit with your mind. And if you missed, then you missed the exit. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Not everybody. So someone was responding to Joanna. What did Joanna say? I don't know if I see anything from Joanna. I see people responding to a Joanna, but I don't see a Joanna. Maybe she got kicked out. I'm assuming she got kicked out. If she was talking crazy, then thank you for kicking her out, Brittany. So let's see. Somebody said Joanna's got issues. I don't know what she said, but yeah, get rid of her. All right, bye, Joanna. All right. Someone said traditional all day said Don Lemon is flopping. He might be. User said now they're saying he's doing everything wrong. Who? Who's he? Who are you referring to? Thomas said Trump will run the country by then. By when? Well, he only got 4 years and then he's done. So somebody else has to come in after him. So what I'm saying is, of course, they're going to bash Trump for the next 4 years. But if a Republican wins again, especially someone who's like a Trump guy, let's say like Vance, then the mainstream is going to have to change even faster. Uncle Lucas says all he does is talk at people. Who are you talking about? User said all books set up towards viewers. I don't understand the question. Shelley Garden said we just want honesty. Well, I believe you, Shell Garden. The trouble is we don't all agree what's honest and what's not. See, that's the issue. And that's why if we've created this kind of chaos space, but in the space of chaos, there's opportunity. So we don't know what honest is and what honest isn't anymore. That's the issue. So somebody who watches Fox all day says they're honest, and then somebody watches CNN, they say CNN's honest, but they're telling two different stories. So which one is the truth? And that's up to us to figure out now. That's what's changed. But the good thing is that creates opportunity for all of us. It creates opportunity for people like me now that there are so many different ways for people to get information. So I appreciate it. And this is a chaotic space. So any of you who ever notices chaos in life where there used to be one set way of doing things, but now it's changed, that's an opportunity for all of us. So the mainstream media falling apart and journalism dying created an opportunity for people like me to get on apps like TikTok and YouTube and podcasts. And now I can get some of you used to watch TV. Like if it was 30 years ago, a bunch of y'all be watching the news to find out what's happening. Now you can turn on TikTok. Now you can turn on Instagram. Now you can get on Facebook. So it's good for people like myself and you. I'm not saying you had to get in this space, but any industry where you notice disorder and chaos, that means there's an opportunity. Shuggy, what's going on? Good morning to you. Tim Rice says, for me, is your message, not your platform or setup. Yes, exactly. So what I tell all creators, any of you want to get in the creator space, you only need two things you want to be a creator. Number one, can they see you? And number two, can they hear you? And that's not a metaphor. As long as they can clearly see you when you're talking and they can hear what you're saying, then everything's going to be based on what your content. That's it. It just comes down to that. Can they see you and can they hear you? So again, that's why I'm thankful I got this natural light. It gets kind of hot sometimes here, but the natural light is hitting so y'all can see me. And I'm gonna make sure the mics are on. I'm not actually on a mic on TikTok, but y'all can hear me. So as long as they can see you and hear you, then it's basically going off of your material, what you're saying. Chevalier says podcasts and independent are the main source for legitimate and non-biased reporting. I agree with that. The challenge is there are so many of them. How do you know which one? That's what makes it a challenge. So we get to choose our sources these days, and two people can have two different sources and both think that they got the truth when they got two different stories. So that's what makes it very interesting. That's the word I'll use, interesting. The backup account is work on your game 2 with the number 2 after it. Just go to my profile and just look at who I'm following. You'll see I'm following Brittany is one, and the other person I'm following is my backup account. So someone said, why do you give advice to creators when you have less than 9K followers? Well, how many followers I need to have? If you add up all my followers on all platforms, I got more than 9K. But even if I had less than 1,000 followers, what does that have to do with anything? Again, vanity metrics are not the measure of whether somebody's good or not. Somebody could be saying some nonsense and have 1 million followers. That doesn't mean that they can tell you how to build up a business or be a quote unquote creator. I'm not a creator anyway. I'm a business owner, and content, it just happens to be part of the mix. To answer your question, whoever that was. Travis said he's not going anywhere. His name is helping him. Who are you talking about? The G says, how do you know what Lemon is doing performance-wise? Well, it decides what metrics you want to measure. I don't follow Don Lemon. What I'm saying is the frame of how things work. When you work at CNN, the most important audience are your bosses because they're the ones who determine whether you keep getting paid or not. When you have an independent platform, the people who matter are the audience because they determine whether you keep getting paid or not, because whatever you sell, you have to sell to them. So when you work at CNN, there is an audience, but they're not the ones paying you. Who's paying you is the advertisers and your bosses. So the frame changes is my point, DeGees. Hopefully that answers your question. Chris said, what happened with Candace? I know. What happened with Candace? I didn't hear anything happen to her. Rachel said, your thoughts on Walmart modification? I may do a live just talking about that, but I don't know if I can talk about that in too much depth on this platform. JQX says, look at the numbers. Technically, yes, But numbers don't always translate. That's the issue. That's why I just made it clear that I'm a business owner. I'm not a what do they call it? A creator or a influencer or a content person. I do create content, and some people could call me an influencer, and I do create. But most importantly, I'm a business owner, which means the bottom line of what I do is about the business. Is not about vanity metrics. So these numbers that you all referring to, these are what we call vanity metrics. Your number of followers, engagement rate, how many likes you got on the post. All those are what we call vanity metrics. They do not determine how much money you make. And a lot of people from the outside looking in think that that's how it works. That's not how it works. Someone can have 1,000 followers and make more money than a person who has 100,000 followers. Depends on what you're selling, who you're selling it to, and how much you sell it for. I know people who have hardly any following on social media, but they make more money than people who have a bunch of followers on social media. So do not be fooled by vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are how TikTok and Instagram and what's the other apps? That's how they make money. That's not how you make money. So please do not be fooled. Eric said, "You're the only show I watch every day and I believe in. Keep it up." Well, thank you. I'm glad you found me. The G says, "Was the Post an example? Because they definitely didn't endorse a president candidate." The Washington Post? The only reason they didn't endorse a candidate is because their owner, a guy by the name of Jeff Bezos, said that y'all not putting that article out. They wanted to, and Jeff Bezos said, "You're not doing it." So I don't know if you know that story, but look up the letter that Jeff Bezos wrote. He put it out publicly for everybody to read. So that'll help you understand the context. R. Lewis said, "The younger generation is too lazy to read newspapers." I don't think that's the reason, R. Lewis. I get what you're saying. The younger generation doesn't read newspapers because they never were introduced to newspapers. They grew up with smartphones. So why read a newspaper when I could read it on my phone? The same information, or at least what I think is the same information. It's not that they're lazy. I don't think they're lazy. I think people in general don't read. In general, that's all ages. But the younger generation, they've been trained to look at their phones. So that's the thing. If you've been trained one way, then you're going to do things a certain way. So the younger generation might look at you, R. Lewis, and say, "Well, you're too old to get on the phone." So y'all both right. I mean, if we're being honest, thank you. 15K. Thank you, everybody. We got to 15K likes. Artist Mama said, "You make a lot of sense." Thank you. The G said, "Too much information by people that aren't informed." Well, again, that's a very subjective thing. Who's informed and who's not? Like, somebody could listen to me talk on one of these lives and say that I'm not informed. But then somebody else can listen to it and say, "Dre, you are greatly informed. You have great information. Thank you." Another person can listen to it and say, "Dre, you're terrible. You're a bum. I'll never listen to you ever again." Who's right and who's wrong? That's the opportunity for all of us, is that you can build up an audience. I see a bunch of people LOLing. I don't even remember what I said, but whatever it was, hopefully y'all are laughing at something that I said. Lala said 40 here. Yes. Oh yeah, Matt. Oh yeah. Y'all remember MapQuest? Yes, MapQuest back in the day when you needed directions. Yes. And that's the other thing about smartphones. Back in the days, we would get in a car and drive somewhere without looking up maps. We would just drive. And if we ran into a detour, we went around it. Nowadays, we put something in the directions, even if we already been there 100 times. So the smartphone actually is making us a little bit dumber because we're not using our brains as often. We defer to the smartphone, even though we already know what the smartphone is going to tell us, or at least we think we do. Yes, I remember that. Shout out to MapQuest. I think they still exist. Does MapQuest still exist? Rachel, you have a question? Go ahead and post it. The Anxious Generation. Yes, that's a good book. I think that's Haidt, Jonathan Haidt. He wrote another book called I think that's him. I have the book. I haven't read it yet. The book he wrote that I did read is called The Coddling of the American Mind. So if y'all haven't read that, read that book. His last name is Haidt. So go on Amazon or Audible, wherever you read books. Look up that author. His name is Haidt. He's written a couple books. Chris said, "I'm glad I found you. I've been around to help you grow here for your well-said info." Thank you. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Melanie said, "Vanity metrics." Thank you for that term. Yeah, I didn't make it up, but you can give me credit for it. Vanity metrics are all, especially those of you who are in business. Okay. If you are in business, any metric that is not directly related to the money that you make, because that's what business is. Business is about making money. So any metric that is not about the money that you make is called a vanity metric, meaning it makes you look good. It may make you feel good. It may give you credibility with certain people who don't understand the game, but it's really just about vanity. It has nothing to do with your business. So again, you can have 100,000 followers and not be making money. Followers are not customers. A follower on social media is not the same as a customer buying something from you. I will trade 100,000 followers for 1,000 customers any day of the week. You understand the difference? Customer is a person giving you money. A follower is a person watching you on social media. They are not the same. They are not equal. And one is worth a lot more than the other. And if you happen to be in business, this should be embedded in your brain. So be careful when people go talking about, so somebody had left that comment, you're giving advice to creators with less than 9K followers. It's not about how many followers I got. Question is, how many customers do I have? That's the question you should be asking. I can have 10 followers and still have more customers than, again, somebody with 100 times more followers than me. So how many times have they been in the UN building? Who are you referring to? Awake, so awake. Thank you. I appreciate that. Traditional All Day said, Dre, please talk about the public school systems. You must have missed that live, Traditional All Day. I did 2 hours on the public school system. On the education, I just did the education system, period. And I did that one when I was talking about the destruction of the Department of Education that Trump is claiming he's going to do. Ash Lucy, thank you for the rose. Look that up on YouTube, Traditional All Day. It's on YouTube. Brittany, can you put just tell them that the link to my YouTube channel is in my bio? Or you can just look me up at Dre Baldwin. Just look up the name Dre Baldwin, D-R-E. My last name is Baldwin, B-A-L-D-W-I-N. Look me up on YouTube. I got plenty of videos. I'm very easy to find. Cosetta, thank you for the follow. And everybody else who started following me. I know a bunch of you did. Thank you for that. Like I said, I think he's saying the upcoming generation is into bringing back vinyls. Well, they can try. The vinyl industry is a niche industry, and it will stay that way. Rolando said Jeff Bezos leans liberal as well. I generally believe that, Rolando. And also Jeff Bezos is a businessman. And Jeff Bezos understands that he owns a news business. And if he wants people to read the news, then the people have to believe that the news is being honest. He said that in his letter. So please, y'all look up that letter that Jeff Bezos wrote. It was an open letter to his staff that he put out to the public so everybody could understand where he's at in his thinking. And what he was explaining to his staff is why we are not endorsing a presidential candidate, because all that does is further the belief that we are leaning to one side or the other politically, but we can't lean to one side and be a news organization. That doesn't make any sense. So Jeff was explaining that. So whether he's liberal or conservative is irrelevant, because his point was this is a business. So I'm glad you brought this point up. Jeff Bezos is a businessman. So this goes right to what I just told you all. When you're in business, the thing that matters is the money. Jeff Bezos is a business guy. He owns Amazon. Those of you don't know his name. He owns Amazon. He understands that for our business to thrive, we had to do things that serve the business. What serves the business is not endorsing Trump or Kamala. What serves the business when we're in the news industry is telling people the objective truth. So if we come out and say, well, we support the Democrat or we support the Republican, well, that means half of the people who might support our business will not read us because they believe we're on one side or the other. We need to show people that we are straight down the middle. Therefore, we are not picking a side. That's a business decision. That's not a vanity decision. Jeff Bezos understands that very well, and that's the reason why Amazon is Amazon. So it doesn't even matter if he's liberal or conservative. What he did was a great business decision. So hopefully y'all understand that. Traditional said, I think our phones are making us dumber. Yes, they are. Phones are making us dumber because we're simply not using our brains as much. It's not the phone's doing anything wrong. It's just the phone has become a crutch. All right. How many of you, again, if you're over the age of 30, for example, if you're a male over the age of 30, you know that back in the days, if you want to talk to a girl, you had to actually go to where girls physically were, and you had to physically approach the girl, and you had to physically talk to her in person. Nowadays, you can get on Instagram and send DMs. I come from the era where I grew up in the era where if you want to talk to a girl or girls, period, you had to go to where the girls were at. That means you had to go to a party, or you had to go to school, or you had to see a girl at the mall, and you had to walk up to them and talk to them. You couldn't like their picture on Instagram. You had to actually talk to people. And you develop skills when you have to actually talk to people in real life that you cannot develop through the internet or through a phone. And I'm at the same time young enough that when the internet became a thing, I could jump on that too. So this is why people in that range, if you're between the ranges of, if you were born anywhere between 1970 and 1990, you are kind of in that range that I'm describing, to where you had to learn in-person skills, like really doing things in real life. And at the same time, you were able to jump on the internet when it came around. So you got the best of both worlds. Now, if you were born before that, you might not be so open to the internet. I'm not saying everybody. Like my parents, they were born before that. And if you're born after that, you didn't have to live in the real life engagement era. You could do everything through your phone. So they don't have the interpersonal skills that we had to develop. So there's this mix that's like the perfect mix is in there. Ash said, I follow you on YouTube too. Thank you. Shout out to YouTube. Shout out to people watching on YouTube. I know some of y'all are listening. I'm just reading comments on TikTok right now. So for those of you who are just listening to me right now, I'm just reading comments. Keith said, news is an oxymoron these days. Well, I get what you're saying. I mean, anything can be news. News is relative. Like, I can consider it news that it rains in Miami, but if you live in Dallas, then it's not news to you because why do you care? Mark said, would you really want to work with someone questioning capitalism? I don't understand the context of your question. It depends on who they are. All right. If you want to hire me, let's say you run a company that questions capitalism, but you want to hire me to come give a speech. Yes, I'll work with you. Yes, I'll work with you. All right. As soon as that wire hits, it goes on my calendar. Yes, I will work with you. So I need to understand the context of your question. What are you asking? All right. I'll take a couple more comments. All right. You got comments? Go ahead and post them. I'll take a couple more, then we'll wrap this up. And maybe we'll start ending these by 9:30. I know I'm pushing some of you to the limit, taking this up to 10 o'clock some days, and myself too, because I got to go to the bathroom sometimes, and I'm sitting on here till 10 o'clock. So I think we're going to try to make these 90 minutes. Would that work for y'all? Would y'all like, let me ask a question. Would y'all rather my lives to be 90 minutes or 2 hours? I think 90 minutes is a good fit. We're right at 90 minutes right now. So if you like 90 minutes, put 90. If you like 2 hours, put 2. What would you rather? What works better for you all? If I did 90 minutes or if I did 2 hours? I think if we do 90 minutes, I think that works better for all y'all because I think a lot of you got to go to work. All right. And y'all got things to do. Nikki said 3 hours. I would do 3 hours. It depends. Yeah, Brittany said it depends on the topic. That is true. Some topics I just got a lot more to say, but I could, as y'all see, I can fill time very easily. I think we might try 90 minutes for a few topics, especially is not the election is over. I think we all pretty much agree that where we're at. Some of you are already at work. Shout out to people listening to me at work. Snuggle said 2 hours. So some of you like 2 hours. Some of you like 90 minutes. All right. As long as y'all are engaging in the comments, then what I'm going to do, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to usually start these at 8 o'clock. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 9 o'clock with the content, and then we're going to do engagement after that. I'll just respond to comments and see what people have to say. So that's what we'll do. If it's good comments, then I might just take the hour and do comments. And if it's not, or if the comments are a little bit quieter, then I'll do 30 minutes of comments. So I think I'm just going to try to do an hour of content. That's what I'm going to do. Brittany says she's working. LOL. Shout out to people who can listen to me while you're working. Shout out to everybody listening to me at work. Shout out to everybody at work out there. Oh, yeah. So in the future, what are we going to talk about? So I think I'm going to do, and y'all tell me if y'all want me to do this. A lot of you really don't know who I am or where I come from. This won't really be a current event, but would you want me to do a stream where I just explain to you my background, where I come from, and how I got to this point? Would y'all want to hear that? If you don't, it's all good. We can keep talking about the news. And if you want to hear that, put the word yes. If you want me to just give you a background on who I am, where I come from, how I got to where I'm at, I could do a live on that. And that could be, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. For those of you in America, y'all notice you're watching on replay. So I could do that tomorrow, or I might do it Friday. I don't know if I'm going to go live tomorrow. Tomorrow's a holiday. I know I'm getting up early because I like to get up early and work out. So I know I'm going to be up. I think tomorrow I might do that one either tomorrow or Friday. So a lot of people say, yes, it helps with the context for y'all understand me. Okay, I'm going to do that one. I don't know if I'm going to do it tomorrow or Friday because I know a lot of you might not be at work. You might not be on your normal schedule, so you might miss it. So maybe I'll save that for next week. I might save that for next week. Melanie said it doesn't have to be a live, it can be a video you post. Well, it would be a long video because I had to give you the full context. So it would take some time. So some people saying Friday, should I do that one on Thursday or Friday? What are y'all thinking? Because I know a lot of you not going to be on your normal schedule tomorrow because it's a holiday. So should I save that one for next week? Because if I do it Monday, then everybody will be back to their normal schedule. If I do it tomorrow, a lot of you are going to miss it. And if I do it Friday, some of you are going to miss it because I know many of you are not going to be working on Friday. So what should we do? Friday? Monday. Some people say Monday. I might hold that one to Monday. I might hold it to Monday. Okay. All right. This is what I hold that to Monday because I know a lot of you are going to be on vacation for the next 2 days. So what I'm going to do Thursday and Friday, I will go live tomorrow. I think I may just do maybe an open Q&A type of thing Thursday and Friday. And I know it's not going to be as well attended because I know a lot of you are not going to be up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a holiday. I get it. All right. Shout out to all y'all getting some extra sleep on a holiday. So what I think I'll do Thursday and Friday is I may just do open Q&As or maybe talk a little bit more about evergreen stuff, because I got a lot of evergreen content. For those of you, again, don't know me, most of my content is evergreen. It's not usually, I only start doing the current events when I start doing these lives, and I found that people like current events when I do live, but when I do evergreen stuff, that's stuff that doesn't matter when you consume it, is always relevant. That's most of my material. That's my recorded stuff. So if you look me up on YouTube or on TikTok, you'll see a lot of clips that I pull actually out of these lives, but a lot of my stuff is evergreen. So I'll probably do some evergreen stuff Thursday and Friday, because I know a lot of you are going to miss it, and I want y'all to catch everything that I say. So Monday, when we're back to the normal audience and everybody is here, Monday, I'm going to do Who is Dre Baldwin? That's my name, by the way. A lot of y'all don't even know my name. My name is Dre Baldwin. I'll give you my entire background, where I came from, through the sports, from college, through the sports world, to how I got into entrepreneurship, to talking about mindset, to how I got to talking about business, and how we got to this point. I'll explain all that to you on Monday. Okay. Thursday and Friday, I'll decide what to do Thursday and Friday, because I know a lot of you are going to miss it. So it's not going to be, if you miss it, it's cool. It'll be on YouTube. Y'all can watch the replay. Okay. So, yes, I'm Eastern Standard Time. Yes, 8 a.m. Eastern. Brittany, can you post that as well? Thank you, Brittany. Brittany is my moderator. So everybody, please give a thanks to Brittany 2.0, who is moderating in the comments and pinning the comments for us. Let everyone know the time that I go live, which is 8 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. I will go live Thursday and Friday this week. I know you may miss it. It's cool if you miss it. I'll get back to the current events on Monday. Thursday and Friday, I'll decide what to talk about. I got 3,000, 5,000 pieces of things that I could pull from for Thursday and Friday. 8 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday is when I do these lives. So everybody got that? So Christmas, let's say, what day is Christmas this year? Christmas is, I'm looking at the month calendar. Christmas this year is on a Wednesday. So I'll probably go live on Christmas. There's a Wednesday. Actually, I might not go live that day, because Wednesday is usually the day I go to the gym, and the gym's not going to be open that day. So I might take Christmas Day off. That might be the one day I take off. New Year's Day, I'll probably go live New Year's Day. We'll see. I gotta decide what I'm gonna do those days. But this year I will go live then. All right. Usually we're gonna do, again, I'm gonna try to end these by 9:30. Depending on the subject, I might go 2 hours, but we'll never go past 10 o'clock. All right. I promise you all that, because I drink a lot of water. I work out first thing in the morning, and I drink a lot of water in the morning. I've already drank 5 liters of water today. I sweat a lot too, but by 10 o'clock, I have to go to the bathroom. I cannot sit for 2 hours without going to the bathroom. That's probably too much information for y'all, but y'all get the point. So everybody have a great Thanksgiving. If you're not going to be here tomorrow, I will be live tomorrow. I'll decide on the topic. Make sure you're following me in more than one app. If you are on TikTok, click in my bio. You'll see a link to my Instagram and also a link to my YouTube. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on and subscribe to me on YouTube. If you're on YouTube or Instagram or Rumble or X or LinkedIn, make sure you follow me on other apps, because, again, we don't control these apps. They make their own rules. They can do whatever they want to do. And if they decide they don't like me anymore, then it's a wrap. So make sure you follow me in more than one place. All right, everybody got that? Because I do not control what these platforms decide to do. We're just using them. We're just visitors. We are renters, not owners. Everybody got it? All right, keep that in mind, especially those of you who publish as well. You do not own these platforms. Don't build your whole business on these platforms. They can pull the rug out from under you at any day. And then how are you going to make money if your business is based on social media? Do not base your business on a social media app ever. All right, everybody heard me? All right, don't ever do that. That will cost you. I know people who have done it, and it was a grave mistake. All right, I can get into a whole other topic. Y'all see, I like doing this stuff. So let's go. Everybody have a great Wednesday. I will see some of you tomorrow. The rest of you, I will see Friday. The rest of you, I'll see Monday. You already know what the topic is. Everybody have a great day. We out of here. Work on your game.